Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Expanding the Zone. I'm Shane Combs alongside my brother Mac Holmes, as I always am here. As believe it or not, we're in season 7. I think this is our fourth show, Matt, of this seventh season, show 75 overall. Continue to enjoy the process with you as we throw a little leadership type of coaching player. Um, just type of professional development out there. We get great feedback. Enjoy everybody each and every week participating with the show and kind of driving the content. And thank you, as always, to Dr. Chris Good Health Chiropractic Center, for all the support here on the YouTube channel. Hope you're watching us on the YouTube side. If you're not, make sure you subscribe there. And as well, make sure you look for us wherever you get your podcasts there on your podcast apps. And, Matt, as we take a look here, show 75, I guess if I'm going to put a title on it, I'll call it Sophomore Slump. Now, there's a lot of different ways we're going to go with that, but I guess what got me thinking about this particular topic is, you look, so many people that go into the second stage of a particular development. Like if you're to use a higher level of sports, just for more well-known examples, maybe it's a very talented Jaden Daniels getting ready to go into a second year in the NFL after an incredible rookie season, or a Caitlin Clark who's just obviously been a complete marketing game changer for the WNBA going into her second season, kind of fighting through a lot of injuries here. You and I are huge Reds fans. If you look back to this young group coming up through the 23, 24, now 25 process, that would be another example, right? So what we're looking at here is through the process of going from one stage of development to the next, really, no matter what age group you're in, or no matter what level of playing or competition or leadership that you might be in, there's always a little changing year in, year out. And I think it's important to be aware of some of the things we're going to talk about here this evening. So, as I always do, I say welcome and throw it over to you. And as you kind of think about this week's topic, kind of get us started, maybe with a little introduction to it all.
Yeah, you kind of said it there, Shane. I think that, I can remember this year I was watching a Reds game and Jeff Brantley, one of the announcers, was talking about Matt McLean, who really is in his second year. He missed all of last year due to injury. He struggled a little bit offensively this year. I think most people feel like he's going to be a good player, and but Brantley was talking about how year two is so challenging for people because there's adjustments that the opponent's making to you. There's things you're trying to figure out in your own game. Can you now adjust? And it got me thinking a little bit of really in every walk of life, and the high school kids we coach. And I know somebody's going to get on here, some sophomores going to see this and be like, oh, I got to, it's usually not a sophomore, right, at the high school level, because a lot of times freshmen aren't going to play. Sometimes it's juniors in their second year where they've had a good sophomore year and it's their junior year, and their roles increasing. They want to do more. And we're going to get into all that. But like, I think that even in professional, walks of life where you get a new job and you're fresh, and then year two hits and some challenges. So I think when you and I kind of, and we don't do, as you've mentioned before, a lot of show prep because we want to kind of keep it, I guess, just kind of spontaneous. But in the little bit that we discussed this, I think we were kind of on the same page of, in whatever you do, that second year, are there some challenges that are unique to that?
I'm glad you said it that way, because I think as we go through this tonight, you could relate this to any stage of your development, or maybe your child's development, a player that your coaching's development. As I prepared for tonight's show, I thought of all the way down the little league. If you are, a B league baseball player, 9 year old year to 10 year old year, or an A league baseball team, 11 to 12, or in high school, as you said, each year by year, if you go from being a high school star to a college athlete, or as I've given some examples here, college going into their rookie season and then that sophomore season. So I think it really does apply. And I think what happens, we use that term honeymoon period. I think early on, Matt, from where I stand, the expectation is the key word that really says if the results are good or bad. So I think as we go through the show, I'm going to find myself pointing back to expectations. And sometimes what happens is you overachieve, it leads to later failure. Or
Mhm.
sometimes if you underachieve, it kind of sets you up for success later on. So I see it with teams and I see it with individuals. And I could probably give a lot of examples as we go through the show. But let me just start in that spot there. Think about expectations for me and see if you follow. Um, don't you think what we expect going in kind of determines how we end up feeling about the results being good or bad?
Yeah, and Shane, I would say that it's your own expectation and it's the other people's expectations of you. You know, you've got your own expectations and other expectations because let's face it, like you used an example of you had brought up Little League and it just sparked a memory with me a couple years ago when my son was 11 years old. Um, first year you're going to the A diamond and you're seeing a little bit better pitching, so you're kind of, how we do. And I think my expectations, he probably exceeded those a little bit that year. But then he goes into his 12-year-old year and now the expectations in his mind are off the chart. Well, I hit the ball pretty good last year. So this year I should hit 5 home runs and I should hit
Yeah.
750 and
Yeah.
and you almost start setting. So he would come home and be like, "Dad, I've gotten worse. I've gotten worse. I'm not as good." I'm like, "Well, no, you're not worse. Like, look, with Game Changer, we talked about in the last show, right? I guess one of the advantages of it is you can see the stats, but I was like, no, your batting average is a little bit higher, your on base percentage is a little bit higher, you've hit with a little bit more power, but because you haven't got to hit every time up, or you thought that you should go from here to here, and maybe you've only went from here to here. There's still an improvement, right? But so his expectations, Shane, you know, got him in trouble in that situation. I think that happens with players, high school players. They have a good first year on varsity, whatever sport they're in. What's their immediate mindset? Well, next year I should be all league. I should be all district. I should be starting every game. I should, whatever the case is. And then sometimes other people's expectations of that person, especially at the professional level, right? We all did it with the Reds, probably a little bit. Oh, well, this kid, Matt McClain, I just use that example. He did this his first year. He should just come in and do this year. And sometimes those expectations, if you're not careful, can get you in trouble because instead of just like sticking with the process and getting better every day, we set these bars for ourselves that sometimes can get you in trouble a little bit.
I think the other thing that comes with the growth in a year, be it in the job place or whatever, a lot of times can become the responsibility that is given. A lot of times in year one, I used the term honeymoon period there earlier. Don't you think the responsibility goes up a little bit? I use some of the professional sports analogies into their second year, where if they're that good, take the Jaden Daniels analogy I was using there. Well, Washington is put a lot of stock into him now. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more responsibility on him now that rookie season's over to kind of be the face of the franchise. That's a whole different level of pressure that before it even comes down to taking a snap or throwing a football, right? There's a different level of responsibility there. I think the same is true in the job place sometimes. You start to be given a little bit more responsibility into that second and third year and so forth. So it's not just the expectation, it's probably the responsibility you fall. I would go just something as basic as oftentimes if you go out and do something, let me think of an example, maybe like if you play a lot of golf. If you'll hear the analogy, and maybe I'm way off on this, but you'll hear people say it's hard to follow up a great round with another great round, right? So you go out one day and you're someone that likes to shoot, mid to upper 70s. Okay. So let's say you go out one day and you just play really, really well and you shoot, say, 73. Okay. Well, you go out the next day, same golf course, similar, and you go out and you shoot 79. Well, you probably didn't play that bad, but in your mind, you might have thought you were supposed to shoot 69. You see what I'm saying? So, like,
Right.
I think that happens in all walks of life. Of we go in that first time and we just kind of turn it loose and we play free or we perform free, where now the expectation comes on. And I think there's a mental side of this as well as a physical.
Well, I would argue the mental side's the biggest. truthfully, Shane, in a lot of ways, I think there are some physical things when you're talking about athletically. Um, there are adjustments, especially at the highest level. Um, your opponents are going to adjust to you a little bit, and so there's a physical aspect to that. I think that happens at the high school level sometimes, right? You'll see, I mean, and I know we'll talk a little bit about this, but roles change too. So
Hmm.
like all of a sudden, you're a kid who was a six man on your basketball team last year, and you were just outstanding in that role. I mean, maybe you came in and you averaged 6, 7 points a game off the bench, and you were just really, really dynamic. All of a sudden, now you're a starter, your role increases, but the physical part of that is the other team knows you're a starter. So you're getting the second or third best defender now instead of just whoever defending you because you're off the bench player. So there is a physical aspect to that, right? In baseball, pitchers adjust, hitters adjust, all those things.
Hmm.
But but the mental part, I would argue, Shane, is the biggest of all of them because I think again it goes back to those expectations people put on themselves, the expectations that other people put on them. Use the Jaden Daniels situation. I guarantee you he's probably putting a lot on himself, and there's people putting a lot on him, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like it's going to be pretty hard for that kid, short of taking his team to the Super Bowl, to meet those expectations, probably, right? So it I think the mental side of it, in some cases, maybe even bigger than the physical side.
And you mentioned going to the Super Bowl. I think it goes back to my thing at the beginning. When you overachieve early, it sometimes later sets you up for failure, and that's such an unfair thing. But it's the reality of what it is. Remember early in LeBron's career, I can't remember how many years that was in. It seems like it wasn't that far into the career. Remember they overachieved, and he ended up leading the one Cleveland team to the finals. Well, they were in way they should have never beaten the Pistons, and they got killed by the Spurs that year, correct? And when he came back, it led to them not being able to repeat that. Well, anything shy of the NBA Finals appeared to be a failure, and that probably wasn't fair at all when you consider how much they overachieved or accelerated it to begin with. Because I think there are other factors that take place here. I think there's the role changes you talked about. I think there's a work ethic. Sometimes you can become complacent if you're not careful. So I think there's a negative side. Sometimes you can feel real good about what you accomplished and you can kind of forget some of the roots that got you there. You mentioned the leadership change. Unfortunately, sometimes it's injury. Sometimes it's taking care.
Right.
I mentioned Caitlin Clark in the opening. Here she is in her sophomore season, coming off a Rookie of the Year, and she just had trouble throughout this particular year staying healthy. And so there's a lot of things, and I guess to piggyback off what you said before, I would now throw it to you in terms of someone who is coaching or leading these people that are going through this. Don't you think you have to be aware of this in your point of leadership? Because in these expectations, sometimes, say, well, let's just use you as a coach. Sometimes your player is going to expect maybe a little bit more playing time. They're going to expect a little bit more. Maybe they're going to expect more shots. Maybe they're going to
Right.
expect to compete higher for postseason honors. And maybe that is what you have in mind. Maybe it's not, right? Maybe
Right.
it doesn't fit the so so don't you think part of your off-season preparation as a coach is understanding what each of your players, or as an administrator, understanding what each of your teachers are going to what's going to be their expectation for the upcoming year so that you kind of can meet them at the starting line and be ready to take off with them.
Yeah, I think that that goes into that, I think, role development and role acceptance, you know what I mean? And as a leader, really, really, really clarifying what that person's role is going to be. Um, because I think there is that easy tendency, I guess, to have this natural progression of, well, like you said earlier, I did this well, so I should do this well now moving forward. Um, and in some cases, maybe it's I did this well because I was in exactly the right role for my skill set at that time. And I need to stay right there. Does that make sense? Because if
Oh,
you
yeah.
if you jump forward and you say, well, I did really well here, so it's kind of like, I know we use a lot of Reds examples, and maybe that just bores the daylights out of people. I'm sure there are people out there a lot smarter than us and don't watch these guys on a nightly basis. But like, we've talked before about if you take certain players, right? Like say you take TJ Friedel for the Reds, and you say, okay, you've done a great job of explaining this before. Um, out of the 15 National League teams or whatever, you know, where does he rank amongst leadoff hitters? No, I don't know. I mean, he's having a really good year for him, but I mean, I don't know. Is he half? Is he halfway down? Is he somewhere in that neighborhood? Where does he rank defensively amongst all center fielders? Well, maybe okay. Not terrible, but where would he rank as a 7-hole hitter playing left field? Right? Well, if that were his role, he would be way up here. Man, he's probably one of the best 7-holders in the league, best left. So sometimes when we have to force people into a role that's a little bit above their head, maybe they don't perform quite as well. So my point to that is, if you have a player on your team who has did this role last year and was really good at it, I think sometimes the natural tendency is, well, I'll just up his role this year and he'll move into something bigger and better. But he has to be capable of handling that. Do you understand where I'm going with that?
I think it makes a great point, and I would go back. Gosh, it's been probably several weeks now. It seems like there in the last month or two, we went through the NHL draft and the NBA draft and then the MLB draft and all these different things. And I remember specifically there a couple weeks ago on the MLB draft where they were talking about all these prospects. Every time someone's drafted, right, they have all these experts and they'll sit there and tell you what tool he has and how he's going to do this. He's 17 years old. He's 18 years old. He's
Right.
19 years old. And what's funny about it is some of these guys, they are being described as the very, very best version of what they can someday be 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And I think that's what's so funny about, like, when you think of trade deadlines or you think of different things like that, and we talk about trading prospects, right? So many of these prospects are going to be the very, very best version of themselves on these scout sheets. And it sets them up to, like, there's just no way, there's no way more than just a very, very small percentage can go on when you think back a week or so ago there to the All-Star game and you see all those great young stars, okay? But that's such a small percentage of the people who make that game, right? It's how many
Well,
more. I mean, in minor league baseball, triple A, double A, single A, low A, rookie ball. I mean, I think there's like 150, 160 people per organization in minor league baseball that will never play Major League Baseball, but they've all got these scout sheets. And I guess I kind of like I use that analogy, Matt, just to kind of say that so many times the expectation or what people think we should be, fair or not, puts an expectation of something that we have to, or it gives us a gauge or a level that we need to perform at. In education, maybe it's the state level telling us where our kids should score on testing, right? Or
right.
maybe in coaching, um, preseason polls, all these media people come out, right? I started to become a little bit of the media members, and I'm guilty of it, telling who I think should win the volleyball league, or who I think should win the football league, or who I think should,
Uh-huh.
those are all expectations. So all of these different things, I guess, come back to expectations for me. And wherever you are in the development, that's going to impact how you're judged in terms of how you perform. And I guess in today's time, is it a matter of if you're in competition, if you're in leadership, you kind of know what you're signing up for, or is there more to it than that?
Well, I do think, unfortunately, today's day and age, you probably do have to just take some of that, the good and the bad. Like if you're in a professional organization, if I draft this guy number one, um, anything short of him being, a five-time All-Star and I mean, you look at the Cleveland Browns over the years with quarterbacks, or you draft these guys, you're hoping this is the right one, doesn't work out, whatever. I mean, why do you think some people trade their top draft picks for because they don't want that? responsibility of having to take somebody that might be a bust or whatever. So I do think at that professional level, that is the case. And I think more of at our level, I think I think what we have to be careful of, or what we have to try to do as coaches and leaders, again, is put people in roles where they can be successful and try to limit putting people where they can't be successful, even if they think they can. Like if there's going to be that kid who thinks that he should be, you know, the starting quarterback and he really should not be, or there's going to be that kid who thinks he should bat 3 hole and he should really bat 7 hole, and basketball wise, a kid who thinks he should be a starter and take 10 shots a game maybe really should come off the bench and take 3 shots a game. There's always going to be some of that. And I think as coaches, we have to understand that people are going to, that's okay. It's okay for people to have put those expectations on themselves and to want to be great at what they do. But I think it's our job to help people understand, listen, keep working for that. Work for the role you want, but you need to accept the role you have right now. And this is why I have you in this role, because I think right now it's your best chance to be good at what you do.
On that same line, Matt, don't you think there's sometimes where there's a comfort or a stability for people who have done it before, or they've built up, the reputation of being able to do it. So it could be, it could be you coaching a little league team, and okay, well, these five guys are coming in. They did start when they were 11. They're probably
Uh-huh.
going to be starters here when they're 12. Or in high school, I know this happened to me in coaching before, where I've had a 3 or 4 year starter maybe have a really hard year. I probably gave them a longer leash
Uh-huh.
through a hitting slump than maybe I would have a first year sophomore. Does
Right.
that make sense? And I
Uh-huh.
think you see it in the major league level. You're going to see if a guy's a two-time all-star, he's probably going to be able to go through a 2 for 30 slump and not get sent down. Where a guy who's just trying to make it
Uh-huh.
may not have the luxury of going two for his next 30. He may not have. Are you following what I'm saying? I
Yes.
think I think
Yep.
sometimes I think sometimes once you have established yourself and once you work through, I see it in coaching all the time. I'll see veteran coaches make decisions that I don't think are very good, but they're probably going to have a little bit more leadway because, like, well, they've been doing it for 25 years, you know what I mean? They probably get away with maybe making a mistake that if a first or second year coach made, probably would be looked at in a little bit more critical way. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, yeah, I think it's accurate for sure. I think there's equity that gets built up there.
Mhm.
I think that, when you've proven you can do something, um, there's that tendency for somebody to say, "Hey, let's stick with them a little bit." It's almost like, the back of the baseball card will come true, right?
Mhm.
This is what he's always
See,
done.
there you go, dating yourself again when you say back of the baseball
Oh
card. Now
yeah,
people be
yeah.
like on on the website.
MLB
What's it called?
stats.
Yeah.
Yeah, or what yeah, it's called like
For people that don't know what Matt's
statreference.com.
talking
Yeah.
about, we used to go to the store to get our bubble gum, right? Remember, you
Yes.
get your baseball card.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll get to Hey, I bought my son a pack of baseball cards the other day, and I can't remember what they cost, but it about floored me. And there was no gum in there either, by the way. No gum, and they're way more expensive. But no, I mean, you expect people to sort of come to the norm, right? Like
Right.
statistically,
Right.
um, things tend to have a way of sort of, water finds its level, so to speak. So, uh, I definitely think there's some truth to that. And I don't even know if there's anything wrong with that. I mean, that's probably, that probably makes some sense, truthfully.
No, I do, and the only other thing I had to add is I think what happens is if you're following this into the professional level and really even now the college level, there's probably a dollar amount. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when you
Oh,
think
yeah.
about it, if you're looking at this from an NFL quarterback standpoint, it's one thing when you're on your rookie deal because they probably can put a lot more talent around you because of money, right? As
Uh-huh.
you get 3, 4, 5, 6 years in and you're going to start to make quarterback money, then all of a sudden you better be good enough to carry more of the load because they're paying you more. Therefore, you're not having as many teammates to help you. So I think there's a level of responsibility. I use that analogy not just from a money standpoint, but I think in any walk of life, as your responsibility goes up, the expectation goes up because, hey, you're getting a little bit better at your job. You have a little bit more experience. You've been doing this, you've taught this. Now I need a little bit more out of you in this area. And I just think that's part of the progression. And listen, if you're really good at your craft and you're serious about teaching, if you're serious about coaching, if you're serious about your business sales, if you're serious about being a better player, if you're a player listening to this, that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
don't shy away from it. I would say run toward it and embrace it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know very many people who are really good at what they do that aren't driven. And typically driven people want to continue to go on the rise. They want to get better. They want to figure out what the next thing is. Um, sometimes maybe even to their own detriment. It's always what's next, what's next, what's next. But I do think that you know, that's part of what makes people really good at what they do is looking for that next challenge and wanting to go to that next level.
Well, I look down my list here. I've pretty much crossed everything off, so I'll get us started on final thoughts. And I don't want to cut you off if you have more to get to. By all means, throw it in there. But I guess my final thought, I guess I would come back and try to sum it up as utilize tonight's show topic as when we say sophomore slump, we're really talking about embracing the next challenge ahead. Understanding what you've already been through will probably lay out some of the expectations, some of the responsibilities, some of the roles that you're going to have. But I would also challenge you, if you're in leadership, it's not just about you, it's about all of the different people that you're leading. Can you be aware of what each individual person is experiencing and what it is they're going to want, what challenges they are going to face, and like in any level of leadership or coaching, can you help them throughout that process? And if you can master that overall concept, then I think you put yourself in a position to be really, really successful in some of those key leadership areas, such as team chemistry, relationships, some of those things I hear you say all the time here on Expanding the Zone.
Yeah, that's well said. There's different ways you could go on final thoughts on this. I think the one thing that comes to mind for me is I think the best way to avoid a sophomore slump or to at least limit it is kind of have the humility to understand and expect it to be difficult. Like expect the next step to be difficult and challenging instead of, like you had said earlier, sometimes maybe there's some complacency or there's some overconfidence of, well, man, this isn't that bad. I thought coming up to varsity would be way tougher than this, or I thought you getting called up to the major leagues would be tough, whatever, or I thought being a building principal would be tougher than this, or whatever your line of work is. Sometimes, like you say, you jump into it, things don't seem that tough. You sort of fall right into a role that you're really good at, and you just think, oh, I'm gonna let the good times roll. And sometimes you have to take a step back and understand that if I'm going to do this over a long period of time, there's going to be some challenges, and I need to be careful. I need to almost expect some pitfalls so that I'm ready to handle those as they come my way. So I think some humility, some expectation of difficulty moving forward. I don't think that's a negative mindset. I think some people may disagree with me on that. Think, oh, you're putting yourself into a mindset of negativity or failure. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about being realistic and understanding that there are going to be difficulties along the way that you have to be ready for.
Well, I do have one more point. I want you to comment on this because I think it's way too valuable for our listeners. I guarantee there's some listeners out there that need to hear your response to this. It's something I've been really trying to add to my leadership. I'm teaching some Sunday school at the church and stuff. I try to start each lesson with this. Well, I try to do this about each. Probably 2 weeks, about every 2 weeks in the school setting. I tried to do it in coaching almost on a daily basis, and that's reflection. And that's a little bit
Right.
of what you're talking about there. I think one of the valuable things a leader can do that not all leaders do because we're so busy and we're so on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. I think something that leaders fail to do, Matt, is reflection, and it allows them to determine what went well, what didn't go well. As I go through this again, how would I go about it differently? How could I prepare differently? Maybe give us a comment on that with all of your experience and all the success you've had. Like, I think reflection is one of the most underused things in all of leadership. Maybe tell me if you agree, disagree. Maybe give us some examples on how you try to put reflection in your job.
Well, I think that's spot on. And let's face it, Shane, we're talking tonight about situations where maybe your second year of something's a little tougher than your first. So I think reflection is even harder during times of success.
Mm.
I think reflection is pretty easy when you've come upon hard times, when things didn't go well. Let's say you have a losing season, it's real easy to sit down and say, okay, what went wrong? Daggone, this went wrong, gotta get better here, gotta get better. It's a lot more difficult when you have a good year. Um, you know, I was fortunate last year as a coach to be a part of a good season. Okay. But I can promise you, I've done a bunch of reflecting since then of what did I not do well enough? What do I need to do better? What can our team do better? Because the last thing in the world you want to do is ever think you have it figured out,
Hmm.
and 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 a guy told me once there's two types of coaches, those who are humble and those who are about to be humble. So I've always remembered that along the way. And I think so your reflection is spot on, but I think, don't you think sometimes you forget to reflect when things are going well?
Well, it is because you again, you're so results driven that you see the result, and you forget sometimes in that regional run that if if the ball would have bounced one or two different ways in the sectional final, you might not have had that success to begin
So,
with, right?
yeah.
So as you said, you always want to stay ahead of the game, because if not, the game's going to catch up and hit you pretty hard. That's really well said, Matt. Again, I enjoyed the show. I hope people continue to get something out of expanding the zone, as we're going to put a capper here on show 75. Thank you so much, Dr. Chris Good Health Chiropractic Center, for all the support here. Get us on YouTube, get us on your podcast app. Still got some shows here left in season 7 before we cap it off, as we get ready to go back to school here real soon, right around the corner. But Matt, I enjoy doing this, and I think people continue to get something out of it. And look forward to hearing people's feedback here on our sophomore Slump Show 75. So, again, for Matt Combs, I'm Shane Combs. Appreciate everybody and the support, and we'll see you next time on Expanding the Zone.